Now, for many Nigerians, the state of the nation at this time appears rather gloomy due to the prevailing security situation, poverty, rising unemployment, and many other factors that do not encourage economic growth. Insecurity in the country now threatens the peace and stability of this great nation, leaving citizens in fear for their lives. From kidnapping to banditry to an insurgency that has plagued the Northeast for more than 10 years, there is no doubt that Nigeria needs to re-strategize to tackle all of these challenges head-on to once again become the great country of our dreams. Joining me via Skype is Professor Spate Utomi, co-convener, NCF Front, founder, CEO, Center for Values in Leadership, Political Economy, and management expert. Professor, good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to join you.
Now, let's begin from what is generating a lot of reactions across the country and generating a lot of concerns for parents. And even the UNICEF had to react, which is the spate of kidnappings or abductions of students, basically insecurity across the country. You would recall that when this government came in, that it campaigned on three cardinal issues. Issues on bordering on security, economy, and corruption. And if you are to rate how the government has performed, would like to get your scorecard so far, bearing in mind that the various issues that has been staring the people, Nigerians, in the face over the years.
Well, insecurity is a symptom of a larger malaise. It's not the first time in human history that it has manifested as a way of showing something bigger, more worrying in a society. Back in the 70s, Europe was replete with acts of kidnapping. In Germany, the Bader-Meinhof gang. In Italy, even the mafia got involved, and so on and so forth. In America, there were some famous cases, one being the case of Patty Hearst, the heiress of the Hearst media empire, who during the course of her captivity, in fact, became one of the terrorists, if you will. Now, society had to deal with some fundamental problems, obviously, that began to address some of those issues, and they overcame them. I think we can learn a lot from looking at the experiences of others who have been through this. Basically, in my view, part of the Nigerian problem stems from the fact that we have managed to build a very unequal society. Unequal, not even as a result of some people working harder than others, but unequal based on people just capturing the state and pillaging it. So you look at those who have money in society, they're not those who have the capacity to produce. They're not those who have something to show for it in terms of the people they employ. They are really, let's put it very honestly, gangsters who have taken advantage of politics or whatever it is to rip off the state. So the way that the rest of society responds invariably moves society towards the kind of violence that we now see everywhere. Unfortunately, these things are not a direct systematic response where you see the victims are targeting those who victimize them. Rather, it becomes something that can happen to innocents and the like. However, society must find a clear way of articulating ways of social justice that reduce criminal tendencies to wanting to do things like that. And then it has the obligation to respond in a law and order manner.
All right,
But
if
if
I'll have to come in here, Prof, because you mentioned something and I wouldn't want us to go too far away from it so that you can expatiate on it. You talked about this issue of insecurity being a symptom of a larger Malay, and that we have so far it is because we have been able to build an unequal society. Is the unequal society the larger Malay that you're speaking about, and how did we get there, if that is what it is?
Well, like I said, what makes this unequal society more problematic is that it's not based on something like merit. Some people merit it and worked hard and got, but it's based on criminality. I mean, there are many who say that Nigerian state is a criminal enterprise. But the truth of the matter is that there is a systematic and systemic political corruption in which the push for political power is essentially a push to capture the state and use instruments of the state to advance personal, material, and political interests. Those have created an unequal society that does not incline itself to progress. If it were based on merit and production, which is really what drives growth and development, then you would be creating more jobs. Then you have a steady middle class, the professionals who get those good paying jobs, who have a vested interest in maintaining society's order. But what has happened is that the kind of people who have money in Nigeria have not created jobs because they're basically rent champions. And because they have not created jobs, the middle class is shrinking. This disappearing middle class, you know, that are leaving the country or one way or the other, then take away from the major instrument of stability that most societies, modern societies have. And you will therefore have extremes of the kind that we're seeing every day, the kidnappings, the robberies, and so on and so forth. So we need to rethink our politics to get a political class that understands that its primary mission is to the people and that their self-interest is best advanced within the advance of the common good of all. Right now, they, I like to say, just think self. It's a narcissistic political class. And that's not sustainable. Eventually it leads to social collapse. And that's where Nigeria, unfortunately, seems to be headed.
Now, if we are to rethink our politics, obviously the citizens have a major role to play because if you look at the definition of democracy, it's government of the people and by the people for the people. But then when you look at it, are the citizens playing their roles, demanding accountability, ensuring that we do not head to where we are going, like you have pointed?
Well, the problem really is that, first of all, not enough of us are citizens. Many of us are onlookers who think we are powerless and we don't count. Citizens are people who are involved and who recognize that government is really a matter of some people going to represent your interests. They're agents, your agents. Now, the agency function in politics is the same thing as the agency function in running a company. So when you have corporate governance in which the owners of the business hold managers accountable through instruments of governance, it's the same logic with the agency function in public life. When people who are elected on your behalf by you to represent you account to you for acting on your behalf. Unfortunately, what has happened is that in Nigeria, first of all, they're not representing us because we didn't vote for them. We know that elections are fast in our country. So until we reform the electoral process, our politics is a joke. A politician invests most of his time in trying to prevent the true outcome of voting. So they look at how to manipulate things, how to use security to badger the opposition, to anything but will result in the outcome I was making a joke the other day about efficiency of elections, and the American says the elections are so efficient. A few hours after the polls close in California, you know who has won. The French say, look, for us, 7 p.m. on any election day, you know who the winner is. And the Nigerian says, you guys are boasting about that. You guys are not efficient. 1 week before the elections, we can give you the outcome to the number, voting number. So elections don't take place in Nigeria. They are a farce, and it encourages state capture. So most politicians, from day one, what they invest their time in is how can we thwart the will of the people. Now, once that is established as the basis of politics, then it is hard to get citizenship to take care of the agency function of the public official. He doesn't owe you anything because he knows that he doesn't owe the position to you. You did not vote for him. So that's a fundamental problem. Whatever we do, unless we reform the electoral process, it's a waste of time. You won't win the election. Even if everybody in the country votes for you, you will not win the election. So first thing we must do is reform the electoral process. Of course, change our constitution. It's currently not designed to facilitate, the people getting the best for themselves from the constitution. By the time we take care of those two things, we're in a better position for citizens to talk about accountability.
Now, you said there are citizens and there are onlookers. We'd like to understand who is a citizen and who is an onlooker if you are saying that we are not all citizens.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. The other day I was reminding people of how the Greeks categorize people in society. The lowest level of society are people who think only of themselves. They tend to call those people idiots, not an abuse or insult, but that's the name they had for people who just think only of themselves. And then at the next level, you have people who think only of people who are related to them, close to them, either like blood, religion, or something. Those are tribesmen. And for tribesmen, anybody outside of their tribe is an enemy. So it's a perpetual state of war. There's an American called Joshua Green, who's a professor at Harvard, who's written a very interesting book, Moral Tribes, around these emotions, reason, and the gap between us and them. So tribesmen are permanently in this us and them warfare, which is what returned to America under Trump. Then, of course, at the highest level are people who think of the shared humanity. And those are citizens, people who are concerned about bigger things for the good of all, and engage in the police by saying this is the way things should be done, that is the way. Now, some people just think, what can I do? Let me just sit in my house. They will do what they want to do. God will catch them one day. They just keep praying that God will catch them. God is a long-suffering God. He may not choose to catch them as quickly as that. So citizens are people who get up and say, no, there are 50,000 of us in this neighborhood, and we know that 40,000 of us voted against this man. How come he's the one who has emerged? And do the needful. I mean, in Kano, consistently over a period of time until the last Ganduje election, the people of Kano had a way of stopping people they didn't want to govern them. And that's why they had a series of one-term governors. My friend Ibrahim Shekarau, who's a senator now, was a school principal, humiliated by a governor, the incumbent, decided to run against the incumbent, and the people rallied, and he defeated him. So I think that, we can learn a lot from the youth of Kano, who policed the system. In 2007, I know how much the ruling party wanted to take Kano. Everything they did, but the youth of Kano resisted that.
All right.
So we do have expressions of citizenship in our experience.
Okay, you mentioned that if we are to see the change that will address the root causes of the issues we're facing now, we must look at reforming our electoral process and change the constitution. This for which, for some persons or a cross-section of Nigerians, are plans in the long term. But when we're looking at a short-term plan to especially address issues of abduction of children, especially in schools, where parents are already finding it challenging to even send some of their children to schools. And we already know the number of out-of-school children that we have as a country. What would you prefer as a solution that will address this issue frontally?
Well, first of all, it goes back to a number of things that we have not done right. First of all, education is the most important thing in any society that wants to make progress. Education and healthcare. You don't get those two right, you're not making progress. So we must guard the ability to educate our young people very, very jealously and how to keep them well. If we are going to educate our young people and we have the appropriate infrastructure put in place, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have, then they can get an education wherever they may be in a manner that will frustrate these kinds of people who come to see them collected in a school. With technology, they can all be taking their classes from their homes, and that will be. But even when they are gathered in a school, look, I have difficulty understanding that in this modern age, with drone technology and all of that, that we will see 200-300 people on motorcycles approaching a school, and somehow, it escapes authorities. And somebody has to explain that to me. I really don't understand it. But we can use very simple technology to protect the schools. Drone technology to know what is happening in the perimeters of the school and trigger whatever response needs to be triggered. I think that we can definitely design systems of rapid response to that kind of thing. What we have literally just done is handed Boko Haram on a platter of gold what they were killing for so many years. They didn't want to book Boko Haram. And suddenly, by kidnapping young people from schools, people are afraid to go to school. And that is exactly what we should prevent them from achieving. So I think that technology is available to prevent that from happening. And I think that we need a little more seriousness on the part of the public authorities to ensure that this is the case.
Now, recently, the reports with regard to the rise in unemployment is about 33.3% in 6 months. And it places Nigeria second country with the highest number of jobless people in the world after Namibia. And the concern is that Nigeria is not the only country that was affected by the pandemic. We saw that the pandemic affected a lot of countries, but this record or data that we are getting is seemingly concerning for a lot of persons. As it stands, what is on the mind of people is how do we get out of this position that we found ourselves?
I think we need to be honest to ourselves. There isn't enough seriousness in how we govern in Nigeria. Let me be very frank. The trends have been there for a while. The outcomes were there to be seen. But the urgency that it deserved did not enter consciousness of the governing elite. Look, in 2019, there was a huge outcry from the world that Nigeria was a terrible place to invest in. May 28, 2019, Forbes magazine actually wrote an article that said Nigeria was Africa's money-losing machine. And this actually was tracked back to the fact that the biggest risk of doing business in Nigeria is the government of Nigeria. Whether we like to accept it or not, that is the truth. Regulatory risk is so high in Nigeria, the governor is likely to cancel your CFO for no reason other than that he wants a piece of the action and that he thought imagines that the governor before who approved it may have gotten something. So silly things like that. These things have made Nigeria a very uncertain place to invest in. People don't want to invest, Nigerians and foreigners alike, because the uncertainties are too high. I mean, I wrote a book in 1998 titled Managing Uncertainty, Competition and Strategy in Emerging Economies. So the uncertainties are in this environment just out of irresponsible politics. We're already doing damage to the environment of business, and we did not address it. We've not addressed it yet. The governors are still doing these silly things. Then, on top of that, we had the supply chain crisis that COVID brought, and then, of course, the collapse of oil prices. Now, oil prices, we've been talking about this dependence on oil for 30 years. Every budget speech, we have one line about diversifying the base of Nigeria's economy away from a monocultural dependence on oil. And yet nothing happens. Every year we repeat the same statement. It is because we have a lazy political elite that just, so long as oil can bring easy money and they can share, and that's okay. The hard work that it takes to move the country away from oil. Look, in 2003, two economists from Colombia writing an IMF working paper basically said that Nigeria would be better off if it didn't have a government, if it just put together some people to write checks to Nigerians to the value of the amount being raised from crude oil. So you get your $500 check, everybody get your check. The Nigerian economy in terms of the welfare function will be better off. You would think that this would make Nigerian politicians angry to death and no, we must change this, but no. We continue the same way.
But severally, so the government has talked about diversification. It came up with an agenda, especially diversifying the economy, and its focus was agriculture.
About it. It's one thing to talk about it, and another to do something. Look, even in the middle of this pandemic, you saw what the Germans did to support small business. You saw what the Americans did. You saw what everybody was doing. Okay, in Nigeria, we have Central Bank of Nigeria talking about, oh, they will do this, they will do that. And you see the manufacturers saying, we've not seen any of the money. The farmers saying, we've not seen any of the money. So there's something fundamentally wrong in our country. Are we nation builders, or are we just adventurers who want to garnish public resources? That's the big problem. Service, service, service. Where is service in political life in Nigeria? Well, sacrifice. You hear government says it's going to commit X billion to something. The politicians begin to think of how to corner the money. You know, they forget that the whole society needs to thrive, that you need to build the basis. That's where jobs will be created. That's where progress will take place. Not that you as a politician corner the money and go and buy a new house in Dubai, which is what unfortunately they do.
All right, that would be a fine place to leave the conversation this morning. Professor Pat Utomi, co-convener, NC Front, founder, CEO, Center for Values and Leadership, Political Economy and Management expert. Thank you for your time on the program.